Crying while male. This one comes to us from Threads. Somebody asked this question just for the men. Society tells men to open up and be vulnerable. And experience tells men that if they cry, they lose respect. So which side is right? That's not one side or the other. These statements aren't even in opposition. And to be honest, the unpacking of the topic isn't even specific to men when it comes to advice, although societal expectation may be. You can open up and be vulnerable without crying. Sharing your thoughts when you know you risk being misunderstood and judged is vulnerability. Likewise, you can cry without being open. The act leaves you vulnerable and open about what you feel without really having to be open about why. Just kind of a weird space to be in. Keep in mind here that your own self-respect is most important. Respect from other people, don't get me wrong, it certainly has its uses. We're tribal people. We want to fit in to a certain extent. Chief among those uses is calibrating the beliefs that underlie your own self-respect, right? So we need feedback and perspective from others. We need to question our thoughts and our behaviors, and they provide a mirror for us to look again at what we're doing to make sure that it's right, but think long and hard before caring too much about the respect of other people. So now let's get over water coming out of our eyes. People's eyes water when they're tired. They leak when irritated by dust or when someone is cutting onions. They can also leak in response to strong emotions, whether they're happy or sad. And we focus on this last category from a male shame perspective, and with good reason. The problem is that the reason has gotten lost. Crying itself is not the problem. It's all about the why and the situation. So emotional regulation is one of the most fundamental jobs of being a functional human being. Crying is a powerful tool for this. It activates your rest, relax, and restore nervous system, right? Which triggers the release of hormones like endorphins and oxytocin to make us feel safe, to help kill pain, even like real physical pain. It helps improve your mood by cooling the brain, something I didn't know before this article. When your brain starts to get physically overheated, your mood gets worse, and the act of crying brings blood flow to that area, which helps cool the brain. So it literally improves your mood by cooling the brain. Weird. It also helps us encode and remember meaningful information, right? It could be how someone hurt us, or on the good side, what it felt like to win the Super Bowl, or like Jake Paul when he was crying at the Olympics when his girlfriend just set a world record and won a gold medal, right? This is encoding a powerful situation. Tears help us do that. We're hardwired to respond to the crying of others, right? This is just a fact. Human beings are hardwired to have an opinion on this. In social situations, it can help get us support, empathy, and helps with bonding. And that support helps us resolve situations and regulate our emotions. This is also where crying can be problematic. This responding to the crying of others is non-voluntary. It's non-voluntary emotional and intellectual labor. Your crying influences the emotional state of people who witness it. This, in turn, prompts them to evaluate the situation, right? Is this legitimate need? Do I need to do something about this? Do I need to provide support? Or could it be an attempt to control someone's actions through emotional manipulation? It could be an overreaction or a display of excessive weakness. We can all remember a childhood meltdown that wasn't justified. I know I can. Being unable to rise to the occasion as an adult isn't a good look. Asking for help when you don't need it. Quite the opposite of a release and a relief of negative emotion, it can also be associated with wallowing, excessively focusing on a negative aspect of something and refusing to deal with it. when we evaluate a situation, especially involving strangers, we never know the full why. At best, we can guess based on the appearances and what we know about that person, which is probably less than we usually think. Even internally, when we ourselves are crying, the reason why we cry can be kind of hazy, right? A specific event may cause your emotional cup to overflow, but there's a ton of unprocessed feelings that left us near capacity before the event was even to blame. Like I've had friends that were in rough spots that would just start crying out of the blue and try and work with them, and they have no idea why. No idea why all of a sudden they had bottled up so much tension for so long and pretended it wasn't there. And when you finally get a chance and you relax mentally and emotionally, bang, all that pain, all that unprocessed drama is there and it wants out, and you can cry and not even know why. Which is why you need to be proactive about dealing with your emotions. Emotional regulation is a full-time thing, not just when your cup is about to tip. And to be fair, there are outcomes that are worse than losing someone's respect. If you ignore or suppress your emotions, you risk that sadness turning into depression or anger. And then you're lashing out at people and causing bigger problems. If you cut off your ability to feel to avoid this, you lose a source of potential power and vibrance and life in your life. So it's not best case scenario to just try and cut off your feelings, because number one, it's not fully possible, and number two, you're cutting part of your life out. But sometimes shit happens. Your eyes produce fluid when you'd rather they didn't. And when it does, there are three things to keep in mind. Start with compassion for yourself. You're human, and by nature, you're imperfect. Getting down on yourself when you're already feeling down or pain or just overwhelming emotion that you need to release a little bit, have compassion for yourself so you can recover. When you get some space, even in the moment, if you can, spend some real time thinking about the full why, including your emotional state leading into this situation, your orientation and beliefs about the situation, and the actual triggering event. Hopefully you can find a way to grow from it and kind of head off feeling excessive emotion or not dealing with emotion as it comes up when you find appropriate times throughout the day or throughout the week, and just suppressing it or pretending it's not there. And finally, have understanding if others judge you negatively. Don't take it personally, and don't assume that judgment is permanent or has any real impact you should be worried about. I posted this one on Reddit, and all the feedback was kind of in line here with what I expected. There's a fair number of people saying, yeah, men should be able to open up and be emotional. And there was probably just as many men who had stories about how they lost respect of loved ones for opening up about the love of their mother. So it runs the gamut. We're not perfect in dealing with this. Some concrete advice I loved from Ninja Panda 86. You can only emote in a few places. Again, holding true for men and women both. Public places aren't great for it, or third spaces, bars, arcades, stuff like that, where people are expecting to have a good time. If it happens, but it's certainly not a place where you'd want to plan to deal with something like this. Don't emote to coworkers. It's dangerous. They're not actually your friends or family. Even if they are by chance, if they are, you hang out with them outside of work too. And outside of work would be the appropriate place to do it if they're a close enough friend. Some advice getting into whining. Again, this gets into the wallowing. If you're whining or crying about the same thing for over a year, you need to start looking at different solutions. And you need to own your problems. That's part of why you look at why you're crying. It becomes, all right, if this is the root problem and it's that bad, I need to focus on doing something to change the situation. Most of the time, you should be able to do this with immediate family or chosen immediate family. If your partner refuses to hear you, I guess there's some people that just aren't good with that. I'm not here to judge your particular relationship. I would think that's probably not a great situation, especially if they're asking for you to do that kind of emotional labor for them. Relationships should be reciprocal. Maybe if you're not getting it back here, you're getting it back somewhere else, but that's your call to judge. It is definitely something to question. Being open and vulnerable helps us work together through tough things. Crying is a tool we have with many purposes, including regulating physical and emotional pain. Be proactive. Find the right audience and time for meeting your needs before a crisis hits. That's not work you put on strangers if you can avoid it. That's all for today's show. Thank you for listening. The part I enjoy most about this show is knowing that people get something out of it, so please like, comment, and subscribe. You can also head over to the About page on my site, adulting.media, to find out more. Once again, thanks for listening and all the best.